Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Lydia and today I'm going to be talking about A.K. Blakemore's The Manningtree Witches. It's her debut novel. It's a historical fiction. It's set in the 1640s, so it's set during the Civil War, the English Civil War, and at the height of the English witch hunts. It tells the story of this village of Manningtree. It's kind of devoid of men because they've gone to fight in the war and whatnot. So the women are kind of left to their own devices. And they have a visitor, Matthew Hopkins, who is the self-appointed witchfinder general, and what ensues is a very kind of feverish, chaotic, menacing account and depiction of the fear and the suspicion and the general reign of terror that these witch hunts and this character Matthew Hopkins had over England at that time. This is a story though about the victims, not the victimizers. And even though Blakemore does this like really interesting job of kind of finding some sort of nuance in the character or the figure of Matthew Hopkins and his motivations, because Matthew Hopkins was a real figure, a real character, and yeah, she does a really great job of sort of like unpicking this and finding the nuance within this character. But the women really do take centre stage. It's a meticulously researched novel, which makes it an absolute delight and a joy to read because of this like sheer attention to detail. Blakemore used a lot of historical sources, court documents, to really flesh out the sort of like the dialogue and the content. But yeah, this is a really very interesting depiction of the witch hunts and the witch trials, and shows this kind of the way that it's a combination of so many different factors that leads to the right and particular conditions for witch hunting to thrive and take place. I'm a big fan of historical fiction. I really love historical fiction, but it's actually something that I rarely read, mainly because I hate when it's sensationalized and inaccurate, and that's often like a feature of this genre. And I'm thinking of a particular writer in particular who loves to write about the Tudors, and it's just something that bores me about history and historical fiction in general, is when people try and sort of sensationalise and sexualise and make more interesting certain periods of history because we're like familiar with them or whatever, when there are so many things that have happened throughout history, so many events, so many people, whatever, that are ridiculously entertaining. You could make about 10 million TV shows about them, or write books about them. But anyway, sorry about my little ramble. But yeah, The Manningtree Witches is historical fiction done right. It reminds me of like Hilary Mantel and Maggie O'Farrell's Hamnet as well. These kind of really shining examples of when historical fiction is done brilliantly. It's enigmatic, and it's electrifying, and it's magnetic. And yeah, it's also a beautifully written novel. I believe from what it said in the blurb that Blakemore is actually a poet. This is like her debut novel, her first, piece of writing outside of poetry. And her poetry is, in this novel, is so incredible. It's enveloping and it's transformative and it's transportative, and it's so evocative and poetical and beautiful. I do have to say though, sometimes, and this was usually in like the first, I would say, third of the novel, I found that her word choice could be quite jarring. Kind of like, when you're writing an essay or something and you're trying to sound really smart, so you're using sort of like really big words, and you know what the words mean, and the words technically make sense in the sentence, but it disrupts the flow. And I felt that really kind of like sometimes took me out of the setting. But yeah, this like really ironed itself out as the plot developed. And this isn't because like the plot overtook the prose. Like, the prose never went away, the quality of the prose never went away. But I think it's because like the pacing and the action really sort of took on a life of its own. And then Blakemore was able to really intertwine the two, whereas I think in the earlier stages, because she was trying to evoke and create the atmosphere and the context that would then allow the plot to unfold, it was like heavily dependent on this use of language. And yeah, I would just be aware sometimes it could be jarring, as I said, but overall it was absolutely stunning and beautiful. Yeah, but there's something really sort of like fresh and sharp about the language that's used, which makes it a very like modern and easy to swallow read, but it's also at the same time like archaic, and it's imbued with like the language of the divinely sanctioned authority of Christian doctrine and theology, and I really appreciate that. And that's just testament to how well it was researched, the topic was researched and studied and really understood and inhabited by Blakemore as she was writing this. It really shines through. That's what makes it so compelling. So this book essentially explores numerous little themes. Women and women's bodies and the fear of women and women's bodies, and the violence enacted on women and women's bodies. There's also obviously like concepts of law and order and justice, and this kind of like men versus women's words, like, how do you prove yourself when you're already condemned and blamed for being X, Y, and Z? How when those in power have already decided that you're guilty, that you are something, this character, this certain type of woman, whatever, how do you prove that you're not? Should you prove that you're not? Obviously looking at things of like what happens in power vacuums and times of crisis under capitalism. But yeah, there's also the importance of words, and this is why I think language is so crucial to this novel, and why the language and the word choices that Blakemore makes are so important and so like meticulously done, is because it's a book about truths and lies. And it's a book about the way that we can manipulate language to suit our own means. We can manipulate our own language and our own words. We can manipulate other people's language and other people's words. And I think so much of that just retains like a relevancy and urgency, that even though like we believe the witch hunts are done, which is something that I'm going to get onto in a minute, that so much of these more, some of these themes are so broad, and continue to be so relevant and significant. But one thing that I really loved about the manningtree witches is like it's so easy, or so obvious, should I say, to see that she has read Federici. It's peppered throughout. So Federici's theory is that the subordination of women and the devaluation of their social position was essential to capitalist wealth growth. And she argues that the witch trials were important in kind of multiple ways, but it was basically in reinforcing these new strict gender roles and hierarchies and the position of women as social reproducers, i.e. staying in the home, making food, cooking, cleaning, looking after the family, but also physically having children and reproducing the nation. And this is why there's something really interesting about the women that are targeted. And in the Manningtree Witches, Blakemore does pick these archetypal characters. Well, I say she uses actual records, so I suppose they're not like types or characters, they're actual people. But they are these certain type of women are accused of witchcraft more than of others. These are often very old women or midwives. But yeah, that's everything. I would say this is a must-read book. These two are must-read books. But I absolutely love this. This is one of, I'm going to say it's one of the best books I've read all this year. I didn't have like the highest hopes of it, to be honest. Like I thought it would be entertaining, but I didn't think it would be so packed full of content, and I just didn't think it'd be as beautiful and as complex and as enjoyable as it was. So I would actually definitely recommend reading this. It was an absolute pleasure and an absolute joy to read. And if you are a history lover like I am, please definitely pick this up. It's there's so much attention to detail that it's absolutely delightful. Even if you kind of know little about this period, you'll appreciate that it's not like a modern writer writing modern characters but set in the past. It is very much a historical novel with historical characters, and it's wonderful. So anyway, thank you for watching this video. All links will be in the bio for where you can find me, and yeah, I will see you in the next one. Bye.